Hello, everyone. Welcome to what is going to be an extremely exciting webinar. Robbie and Lily are with us. You guys can go ahead and turn on your screens or your webcams and your microphones now. Perfect. And hey, so people are joining in as we speak here. I'm going to go ahead and do some introductions while people are joining, give a little bit of house rules, and then we'll go ahead and get started. For those that may not know, my name is Jay Myers. I'm one of the co-founders at Bold Commerce, and subscriptions are a huge part of what we do. And really one of our goals with our software is to empower amazing subscription experiences anywhere. So whether that's on your site, whether that's through SMS, through voice, through headless experiences, our subscription software is an API first solution that really enables that. And it's an exciting time to be in subscriptions. And we're just really excited to be in the space. And this webinar is going to be a really good one. I'm excited to have two amazing guests with us. I'm going to introduce them here. The first one I have is Lily Varon, and she's a senior analyst at Forrester Research. Actually, let me go ahead and pause this so you guys can see our screens a little bit. There you go. Lily's a senior analyst at Forrester Research, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know her pretty well over the last year. One of her key focuses there that I really appreciate is researching strategies and technologies that help brands retain customers in the rapidly evolving subscription and recurring billing space. She's contributed to many of their reports on topics such as e-commerce technology for physical goods, digital goods, mobile commerce, omni-channel commerce, globalization, global payments, and online customer service. She's written a lot. She recently put out a blog called The 5 Tenets of a Sticky Subscription, which we're going to dive into a little bit on this webinar. It's a great read. Highly encourage everyone to read it. We're going to dive into a bit as well. She's a wealth of information. She's helped us a lot at Bold. And so Lily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. What an introduction. I'm excited. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to get into this.
Perfect. And my next guest is Robbie Kellman Baxter. Pulling this up on the screen here. If you're in the subscription space, you've probably heard of Robbie, but if you haven't, I'm gonna give a quick intro as well too. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Robbie a little over a year ago. Robbie is she's a speaker, she's a consultant, she's a strategist to some of the largest brands in the world on building successful subscription models. She's worked with Netflix, Wall Street Journal, Microsoft, and many other venture-backed companies. She's the host of an amazing subscription-focused podcast, which I highly recommend. I'm going to give a plug for it because I listen to it and I get a lot of value from it. It's called Subscription Stories, True Tales from the Trenches. She's had guests on there such as Weight Watchers, HP, Bain & Co., Impossible Foods, and many more. So definitely check out her podcast. And if that's not enough, Robbie is also the author of best-selling book, The Membership Economy, and The Forever Transaction, which she has behind her. I also have both of them, read them both. I'm gonna put these behind me here as well too. I highly recommend these books, and honestly, Robbie is a wealth of knowledge. I had the privilege of having her. I don't know if anyone here listens to, I hope you do, but if you listen to the podcast that I'm a host of called Own Your Commerce, I had her on episode 11, and it was a great episode. It's boldcommerce.com/podcast. Highly recommend checking that out. Robbie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm with Lily. That is the best introduction I've ever gotten. So I'm thrilled to be here and really looking forward to chatting with you both.
You two are easy to introduce. I'll put it that way. Well, then let's get started. I want to set the stage a little bit before we dive into some of the questions. Subscriptions are at an interesting point right now. Let me share my screen here. We're really going through a unique time in the subscription world. And so before we dive into questions, I thought it was important to share some of the background. I think by many accounts, we're seeing incredible subscription success. Subscription is growing in 6 times faster than retail overall. We're seeing brands from every vertical, some of the biggest brands in the world, scrambling to implement a subscription business model. The slide you're seeing right now is just showing the subscription economy versus the S&P 500. And 78% of adults have at least one subscription. The top 5 Fortune 500 companies embrace a subscription model. 75% of organizations say that selling direct D2C, direct to consumer, will offer subscriptions by 2023. And as mentioned, like a lot of the biggest brands, we're seeing Walmart, Best Buy, Taco Bell, Claire's, General Motors, the list goes on. And it's good for brands and it's good for customers. We always say subscriptions are one of the few models that are win-win because for customers, they get better service because they're worth more to the brand. They have a higher lifetime value. And for brands, of course, they can invest, they can spend more to acquire a customer, they can invest more on the customer, they can treat them better because they're more valuable. So it's really a unique scenario where it's a win-win. But when we look at all of these, this is the important thing, is a lot of subscription growth, or a lot of subscription brands, their growth curve looks like this. It's actually pretty flat. And while many brands are growing wildly and having a ton of success, a lot of them are hitting, we call it the subscription death curve. And we see, unfortunately, a lot of brands where they plateau. They get to a point where they can't break out of their monthly churn. And this, it doesn't matter if it's 5%, 10%, 15%. You get to a certain point, it could be 10,000 subscribers, it could be 1 million subscribers, but you get to a point where you're onboarding as many as you're churning every month and you can't grow out of it. But at the same time, some of the best brands in the world are growing faster than they ever have. And so that's what this is about today, to hopefully uncover some of those traits of some of the greatest brands so that you watching can be one of them as well too. So let's dive into the first one. I want to talk about Lily and Robbie. Both of you have different, but I would say both very fantastic views on what's happening in the world of subscriptions. So I'd love to ask each of you what trends you're seeing in the subscription space right now. And we're going to talk about future trends later. So first of all, I would say, do you echo some of the statements I just made? And then what else are you seeing? And I know some of this might be pandemic related, but that's okay. That's, that the effects of the pandemic are here to stay. We can't avoid it. Lily, let's start with you. I know this is what you do. You analyze the market and you provide insights to some of the biggest brands in the world. What trends are you seeing right now in the subscription space? And again, we'll get into the future trends later, but what are you seeing right now going on in subscriptions?
Yeah. So the interesting thing for me, I think, and I know we're going to get into some of this later on too, is what a subscription is, and what consumers sort of recognize as a subscription, and what retailers or brands consider a subscription. I think there's a lot of emphasis right now and experimentation right now on the merchant side on sort of building more loyal, more sticky, more kind of recurring customer relationships. And so on the merchant side, I think we see a lot more experimentation and trying to figure out, but I echo 100% sort of what you're saying about this struggle. Once you get started, kind of how do you keep growing? On the consumer side, and certainly the pandemic accelerated it, but there was interestingly enough, we have data on consumer sentiment and interest in kind of subscriptions, and consumers are more interested. So I think it was 2018, we asked, are you interested in a subscription to a physical good? I think it's only 35%, if that, said that they were interested. Now, fast forward to 2021, that's closer to 45%, 44, 45%, which is a physical good subscription, right? Which is something that has been an area in which has been really hard to get right, an area that consumers, actually have historically not seen a ton of need for. And that's sort of what we've seen accelerate. And I think in the pandemic, we did see consumers sort of sign up for new services, and this was digital and physical good subscriptions, things like music streaming and meal kits and all these things. But when we asked about why did you sign on, like, we can say that the pandemic accelerated it, but when we asked the consumers why they signed on, the pandemic didn't make the top of the list, right? There was myriad reasons why consumers actually, decided to kind of embark on this prolonged financial commitment with these brands, and the pandemic wasn't top of mind there. So the whole story is there's more interest, there's more experimentation, but it's a tough nut to crack, to your point.
Yeah, I would agree. Robbie, how about you? What have you been seeing in the past 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, well, first of all, everything that you and Lily have said resonates with me. Taking a step back, I've been looking at subscriptions now for about 20 years and have seen kind of wave after wave of industry kind of come crashing onto the shore. All of software, all of consumer, media,
Mm,
all of digital natives. And, we're in this phase now where I think, partially because of COVID, partially because of consumer acceptance, physical goods subscriptions, retail, manufacturing, CPG, hospitality is, really having a moment, which was accelerated, I think, by COVID. And where we are right now is, we're kind of, consumers certainly accept it. You said 78% of adults have at least one subscription. I would guess most of them have at least more than one subscription. And, we're dealing with consumer fatigue, consumer sophistication, saying, I don't know why I need all these subscriptions. I don't know why you're forcing me to have this subscription that doesn't really align with my goals. As you said, Jay, when a subscription's done well, it is in the best interest of the customer. And it is in the best interest of the business and the stakeholders, all the stakeholders. So shareholders, owners of the business, as well as the employees. It makes it easier for the employees to plan for the future, and it makes it easier for shareholders to get a high valuation. But we're also seeing a lot of companies rushing to kind of join the gold rush of subscriptions and coming in without an offer that is aligned with the needs of their consumer. I see a lot of companies that over-index on acquisition benefits. So you look at the page of why to buy now, why to sign up, and it's really compelling. But that savvy consumer is already thinking, I'm going to make a note to cancel at the end of the free trial, or to cancel at the end of the first period after I've binged everything, or how many ties does one dad need in a tie subscription? And I think what's happening for organizations is they really need to, every organization is trying to move to subscription if they haven't already. And what's really important is that organizations that are doing subscriptions need to really think not just about the acquisition benefits, but is the product and service experience designed for retention, for engagement, and ultimately for the expansion and deepening of that relationship to kind of break out of the orbit of that, what did you call it? The curve of death. It's like
the subscription death curve,
right? You want to get that velocity that's going to get you out of that orbit, and you only get that if you figure out engagement.
Yeah, that was something I maybe didn't stress enough, kind of in that intro backdrop. Was I feel we're in this transition from a subscription 1.0 to a subscription 2.0 world, where what worked before is now table stakes, and the benefits of subscription and convenience and subscribe and save and replenishment and getting the product like that's just expected now. And if you go to a store and they almost don't have that option, you're looking somewhere else. So that's not what gets them anymore. I want to mention something really quick. I forgot to say also in the intro, if anyone has a question, please post it in the questions panel on your GoToWebinar screen. It should look like a little question mark, and we'll either answer them during, if it's pertaining to the question we're on, or we'll answer them at the end. The first question that someone asked is, will there be a replay? Yes, everyone attending will get a copy of it. So if you need to go to the bathroom or do something, no stress. Okay.
One of the things,
go ahead.
I just want to add there. One of the things is if consumers even think about sort of the subscription. So for example, there's so many ways in which a recurring revenue kind of business model might manifest. When we asked consumers, what types of subscriptions they subscribe to, and we had like membership and access, and we said, for example, Amazon Prime, we had kind of curated things like meal kits or beauty boxes, replenishment things like, subscribe and save. Only like at the time, this was maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, only about a third of consumers said that they subscribed to a membership or access. But when we asked later in the same survey, do you subscribe to Amazon Prime? And of course, we know about 3/4 of the US population subscribe to Amazon Prime. then about 64% or whatever said yes. And so then there's this really interesting question about, you know, what is this subscription? We keep talking about subscription, but in a consumer's mind, you know, they may not be considering it in the same way that we are, right? You know, I feel like Amazon Prime has become sort of a utility payment rather than, you know, something else, or it's become more of a utility. That to me is really fascinating too, about designing kind of the right trigger, I think is the word that Robbie, you use, right? For that, you know, that thing to get them interested in the first place.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a little bit. Actually, I have a question coming up that I think is going to tie into that a bit. The next two questions is I want to frame around why some brands are failing and why some brands are succeeding. And, you know, it might sound like a simple question and it should be obvious, but from what I've observed, it's quite the opposite. Like right before our eyes, brands are trying to figure out membership, and we're seeing they're trying to figure out what it means. And to your point, Lily, like what is it? What does that actually mean, subscription membership? It's not just small brands, it's some of the biggest brands in the world are struggling with it. And Robbie, I know you post a lot about this on your social channels. I see it on LinkedIn, and actually I would encourage everyone watching to follow both of these guests on their social channels. You know, we're seeing Walmart launching, Best Buy launching, we're seeing clothing brands launching. It's like every day, Taco Bell, or it's something every day. Some large brand is trying to figure out subscription, and not all of them are getting it right. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what some of the big mistakes you see are.
So I'll jump in. I think that the biggest mistake, especially with big companies, is, you know, what I see happen over and over again is, you know, at the board level, somebody says, we've got to figure out subscriptions, right? And kind of, that's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog. Subscription is a pricing tactic. It's not a strategy. And if you say we've got to use subscriptions, it's sort of like saying we've got to use email, right? And, you know, it's like, yeah, but what are you using it for? To stay in touch with your colleagues or to send out important newsletters and high value content? And so, you know, what I see is, you know, all these organizations are rushing to have a subscription without taking a step back and saying, what is the job to be done by that subscription? Is the subscription designed as a way, as a point of entry to reduce friction in getting to know a brand? Is it, you know, like in the case of, I think you mentioned, you know, Taco Bell with their taco of the day kind of subscription, a way to bring people back every day and hopefully get them to buy more and bring their friends, right? To make a habit out of something. That's really different than, you know, if the subscription is the entire offer, like with Netflix, right? The whole purpose, that is their whole business. It's not a marketing tool. It's the whole enchilada. And so I think organizations really need to say, what is the role that subscription is going to fill for me? And then they need to say, and what is the promise that I'm going to make to my customers that justifies them paying me on a regular basis so that they can relax into the subscription? And I think a lot of organizations just take whatever products and services they already have, bundle it up and call it a day. Instead of saying, what is this ongoing problem? What is the journey my members on? And how do I fit in such a way that I'm more of a habit? Because really subscriptions are about supporting habits, which help the customer achieve their goals, their ongoing goals, and solve their ongoing problems. And so that subscription product has to be designed in a way to do that. So you talked about meal kits. You know, meal kits can be about discovery of new foods. It can be about saving money. It can be about convenience. You want to know, what is it that you're promising? And then once you know what you're promising, if it's about discovery of new foods, layer in some content. You know, we're going to teach you about these new foods. Here's some articles, some videos, some, you know, interesting insights. You have the commerce already, and then community, right? You can layer in community. Here's other people and what kind of new restaurants and new foods they're discovering. So not getting sort of overly attached to the product, really focusing on that promise that you're making.
So good.
Yeah.
Lily, any thoughts? on mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think mistakes, I think what's hard is that the reasons consumers subscribe, I think I mentioned this already, right? The reasons consumers subscribe runs the gamut. And we tried to do kind of driver analyses and all of this stuff to figure out what makes a consumer more likely to subscribe. What is it about them? What is it about the subscription itself that drives, enrollment? And we couldn't find 1, 2, 3 that rise above, 3 characteristics or 3 rationale that rise above the rest. It's really hard to find that right thing. And so I always talk about you're going to be probably wrong at first. You're going to be kind of you have to do. I cannot stress what Robbie said enough. You have to do that homework, that strategizing, and kind of emphasizing the customer journey and the customer problem. But the truth is, you're only going to get better with that over time, and you have to, like, I always talk about this as kind of a customer insights practice as well, because the more you know about the subscriber and how they use your subscription or how they use your products, the better you can make that offering over time. And so I think that those kind of, it's not that we all are terrible at our jobs. It's that it's really hard to find that right trigger, right? That right thing that makes this subscription worthwhile.
So then, to flip it, I'd love to hear some thoughts on, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, because it's hard to describe how a brand is maybe failing at subscriptions without hinting at how it's winning. But any specific thoughts that brands are really getting right, the ones that are really growing the fastest, what they're really, really nailing perfectly? Lily, let's start with you if you have a thought on that. Or Robbie, yeah, go ahead, either one, yeah. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say really clear acquisition benefits, really clear engagement retention benefits, and a very clear North Star about what problem you're solving for your customers and how you're going to do it. And using that as your North Star rather than over attaching to the products and services that you happen to already have.
Yeah. And I echo that. I think so. One of the things that I've been sort of developing and kicking around for a while are these sort of 5 tenets of a sticky subscription, and it's really aligned with some of what Robbie was already talking about, right? One of the things that so let's run through them, right? Okay, so
I have it on the screen.
Oh, good. Okay, so the prioritizing that customer value, right, and evolving that kind of value over time. This is what the trigger. This is sort of what we're talking about. I need to have a clear reason for enrolling in the first place, right? That trigger has to be compelling enough. But the truth is that I also have to evolve this over time. I use the example of Clear a lot in this case. If former frequent travelers, that there's the fingerprints and the eyeball scanning, but they, came along to solve this problem of expedited security clearance in the airports, but then over time has extended the value that they add to the customer by enabling that service at concert venues and sporting stadiums and things like this, so that they could, add value to their members and also open up new revenue streams for them, right? And the data that they have. So that, it's prioritizing customer value truly, right? Like Robbie said, and as we've alluded to a lot, it's evolving that value over time. And it's related to the second piece, which is really offering kind of actually differentiated convenience, right? Could this offering be a one-click reorder button? Would that solve this problem? Like, if that's the case, don't force a subscription. That's not enough, right?
Yeah.
You know, actually having, you know, a regular shipment of a product, is it really more convenient than picking it up at the store? This has not been the case for a lot of folks. So the folks who do it right, you know, have, you know, it's this, like, I like the Amazon Prime grocery thing, right? A grocery is a subscription service, if you ask me. I'm not enrolled in a auto payment, but I buy 75 to 80% of the same things every week, right? An interesting one could be, right, when you think about this more as a recurring customer relationship, have it, you know, they have a buy it again persistent kind of scrolling banner that tells me facilitates reordering, but grocers could kind of enhance that, right? After a few deliveries of like nearly identical groceries, there could be an editable kind of staples bundle that could be auto created, and then you, right, like that kind of thing, like really getting into that. And I'll fly through the rest because I think some of these are pretty self-explanatory, right? The personalization piece, the customer insights practice, Stitch Fix with like 100 data scientists. Like, we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 data scientists working for our teams, right? There's you know, and they fit in more of a data gathering. Talk about this being a customer insights practice, right? They have that kind of Tinder like dislike, so that they can keep learning about you and what you like. And then Robbie alluded to this about the kind of community and fitting into a larger ecosystem, right? So build an ecosystem around this offering, whatever it might be, right? Content, commerce, events, etc. And then the last one is a little bit harder to pin down, but it has to appeal to consumer emotion in some way. And this one is more easily explained with kind of like an example. So I use Progressive Snapshot, right? Which is, it's an insurance example, but it's that, you know, that dongle that you attach to your car, and they made it's kind of their usage-based insurance plan, but you earn discounts based on good driving, right? So in the before world, before Snapshot, if I talk to my insurance provider, in the best case scenario, I didn't use you, right? I talked to you at renewal time and I'm paying for something I didn't use. And if I talk to you more than that, something really stressful has happened, right? An accident or something like this. Progressive got to switch that with the Snapshot. They could proactively communicate with customers being like, you just earned 5% discount, like, keep going, good work. And that appeal to that customer, it changes the tenor of that customer relationship. And I think that that's a really powerful one, but it's really hard to kind of get right.
Yeah. I want to, let's throw this one up here. And then, well, I want to add one last thing that I think what we've seen that brands having success is they understand that the subscription is more than just the product. It's, I can tell if I ask a merchant, if I say, what does a customer get when they subscribe? If they just say it's this product every month or just this service every month, I can almost always tell they're doomed. But if this is what they get, it's access, it's this community, it's maybe exclusive community, or it's these other benefits, some aspect of curation, like you mentioned, Mealbox. When you look holistically at it, and if it's like, this is the package of benefits, of value, then I almost know that brand is going to be successful. So that's something I've noticed. And then I want to move on to, like, as brands scale, are there any different considerations or any different things they need to focus on? Robbie, I know you've spoken before about what you call the half-life of attention after a subscription purchase, and then continuous onboarding. Is that something you believe that plays into scaling a subscription brand? I know that kind of resonated with me a lot when I heard it. How does that play into brands as they scale their subscription business?
Yeah, I think most organizations underinvest in onboarding and member experience. So, you have this moment, somebody has signed up and they're so excited, right? They in their mind, they think they're going to get all this value forever. I'm going to sign up for the New Yorker and I'm going to read every article and I'm going to be so smart and interesting. But at the same time, as they're so enthusiastic, they're also thinking, and I think I can cancel. I think I need to cancel in 4 weeks before I'm locked in. So I better make a note to myself. So there's kind of this moment when they're both not completely committed in making this a habit, and they're super enthusiastic about getting the value. And that's when you want to really invest in an onboarding experience, in forming the habits, in reinforcing the wisdom of their decision in the first place, in delivering value and making sure they understand all the value they're entitled to. Because if people aren't getting the value they're entitled to, they're going to cancel. So in those first seconds, minutes, days after someone signs up, you really want to make sure that they get the value, form the habits, and kind of take off their consumer hat, put on a member hat, and stop looking for alternatives. So I think that's a really important piece to think about before you start scaling. Because if you haven't done that before you start scaling, you're going to have that cycle of doom where people sign up, stay for a little bit, and then leave. So master that engagement piece and how they stay, and think beyond your products to consider the overall experience and what's going to keep them before you start throwing money at advertising and growth and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think you talked about how onboarding even starts before the customer gets that product. Like they place the order and maybe the product hasn't arrived yet, but you start educating them on the value, the benefits, like before it's even in their hands, right?
Well, absolutely. You want to think about it as a journey, right? And I'm living my life. I have problems. I have goals. I buy something. I sign up for something because I think it's going to help me, get more enjoyment out of life, or have more efficiency in my life, or be a better parent, or a better, more fit person. From the moment I sign up, you want to reinforce the wisdom of that decision. There's 3 things you want to do in an onboarding. You want to reinforce the wisdom of the decision. You want to get them some value as fast as you can, so expedite the first delivery. And you want to show them how they can make sure they get all the value that they're entitled to. And so, in response to your question, you want to reinforce the wisdom of their decision right away and start giving them value as soon as you possibly can. And then you also want to show them all the ways that they're entitled to get value. So a lot of people buy or subscribe to a product and they don't use all the features they're entitled to. So they might, let's say, sign up for the VIP, Roadrunner shoes, for example. They have a VIP program that entitles you to a big discount. I think it's 15% off everything you buy, but it also entitles you to return anything. This is amazing. Anything, even if you used it within 90 days. So a pair of muddy sneakers that you've gone running in 12 times and you're like, they're just not comfortable. They just didn't hold up. You can return them and get your money back. Right? But not everybody uses all the benefits. So it's important to let people know the benefits, because if they're using those benefits, you can be sure, A, they're not going to cancel, and B, they're probably going to tell their friends.
That's so good. I love that. That's a great value that I wouldn't have thought of adding, but it's great. And then they know the data on how many people actually use it, and for what a member is worth, you can figure it out.
And,
Lily,
and it solves. I just wanted to say one thing. It solves the problem, right? Like if you're a runner and you're trying to maximize the enjoyment and the fitness that you get from running, right? One of the biggest things that will hold you back is, I don't want to buy a new pair of shoes because I'm not sure they're going to be right. And then I'm going to have, what am I going to do with them? And, every runner has like a closet full of shoes that they bought and didn't use. So you're removing some of the friction of, what makes it hard for them to enjoy running. Which is, I don't have the right products, but I'm afraid to try them because I don't want to waste my money. Suddenly that problem's gone and you've built a really loyal relationship.
And I think just speaks to the whole concept of like, you might never think you'd subscribe to shoes because you don't know when you're going to wear them out. You don't know. And that's the wrong mindset. It's not a shoe subscription. You're a membership. You're a member to that shoe brand. And here's all the other benefits. Maybe you only buy a shoe, you could buy it every 2 months, every 6 months. You could buy them when you wear them out. But as a member, you get to access to like their run clubs when they're in your city, access to this returns feature, access to maybe coaching and resources and materials and dozens of other things, and that's the membership. Lily, your first of your 5 tenets, I thought might apply to this, where it talks about evolving customer value over time.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be relevant to scaling subscriptions. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we sort of consumer psychology, like we become desensitized to the core value of that, and subscription over time. And so that's why you see folks kind of adding features and benefits faster than they're raising prices, right? It's this idea to kind of like keep folks engaged. Because we're kind of like we take for granted that initial benefit once we get kind of accustomed to it, and so you have to start keep adding value to the subscription, evolving, and this is part of the benefit of having more of a visionary kind of idea of this membership and this recurring customer relationship. And by the way, it doesn't have to be every customer relationship is a membership, right? Not everyone will want to subscribe to the latest release of pens from a particular brand, but there's going to be a segment of customers that want to be, right, completely married to the brand in that capacity around the pens, right? So that's the other thing I think we should talk about too, is that yes, this relationship has to. This is part of another reason why, kind of going back to the other question of like why folks fail. It's because that membership, that subscription becomes stagnant. It becomes, we become desensitized to it as consumers, and then it doesn't have as much value, and you don't realize, you might even see like because we're so acquisition focused, all these new subscribers get 6 months free. When I started, I only got 1 month, or these new subscribers get this other thing, and I don't, as an old, a longer term member of this brand. Why do I feel like I'm being forgotten just because you have my revenue locked in? So I think it's that piece of evolving this over time and tapping into customer insights as to why they're subscribed, like just like Robbie was saying, that as much information that you have permission to gather, and the more transparent you could be about how you're going to use that information and why they might be incentivized to give you that information about why they subscribed or what they find useful, because you might optimize the service over time, the better the stickier your subscription will become.
Yeah, which is a perfect segue. Into subscription fatigue, which is not just a buzzword. Like for brands, this is real. It's killing subscription brands like never before, and customers are tired of subscriptions. And yes, many are doing it right and winning, but many brands are not, and they're failing. Their customers are experiencing subscription fatigue, and it's threatening their existence. And I would say it's not just with their brand. It's often when you go to cancel a subscription, you do a clean house on your credit card, and we've probably all done that. And while this is happening, some brands are winning. So I want to dig into this a bit. Robbie, let's start with you, because I've heard you talk about this a lot. And so first of all, can you define subscription fatigue, and then how might be a way brands can approach avoiding it?
Yeah. So from my perspective, the way I think about subscription fatigue is it's a consumer phenomenon where consumers are cynical and weary, and they say, I'm tired of subscriptions. 20 years ago, when I started talking about subscriptions to people, they were like, their eyes glazed over. They're like, that's not relevant to me. Today, when I tell somebody that I work in the subscription space, they immediately start telling me all the things they hate about subscriptions. Like I can do something about it, about all these bad actors. And so I think there's 3 big drivers of subscription fatigue that any company should be keeping in mind if they want to avoid this, because it's a terrible feeling to launch a new subscription and have your prospects, your prospective subscribers, already being cynical and expecting the worst from you when you're trying to deliver something great. But these are the big 3. So the first one is a lack of product market fit. So an extreme example of this, I remember talking to a woman at some conference, and she had a subscription. She said people were only subscribing for a month or 2 and then canceling. She was thinking about moving to an annual subscription. It was a potty training subscription, right? that lacks product market fit with subscriptions, because most people are only going to work on potty training for a finite period of time. And if it doesn't work, right, we all know, we're going to step away from the problem and come back later, or go see a doctor because it's probably something more serious. So first, make sure that what you're putting in your subscription offering is actually something that somebody would want to keep receiving month after month or year after year. I joke sometimes, like, how many ties does one dad need? I mean, you want to really think about, do you have product market fit? Second thing is related, which is subscription guilt, or subscription overwhelm, which is the offer is so big, I can't use it all, which makes me feel bad about myself because I'm wasting it. And so I cancel. And that's usually where the customer says something really nice, like, I love the New Yorker. It's a great publication, so much value, but the magazines pile up on my bedside table, and that makes me feel bad about myself that I'm not reading them. And so I'm going to cancel. So those first two, they're different. One of them is, you say the company has a terrible product and I hate that. And the other one says the company has a great product that I really admire and love. But in both cases, the customer cancels really early on. So those both drive, so that's exhausting for people. And then the third thing is hiding the cancel button. That's the easiest one to fix. But a lot of companies still to this day will proudly explain that if we add 2 more steps to the cancel flow, or if we only allow people to cancel by phone, we will earn 2 extra months of subscription revenue. That kind of thinking does, not only does it do a lot of damage to your own brand, but it does damage to the whole world of subscriptions, because consumers come in and they're already thinking, how am I going to get out of this, before they've even relaxed into the relationship.
Yeah. I've seen some brands be really progressive, and actually it's the opposite. I get emails reminding me I can pause or snooze a subscription, and they make it really easy, even sending a text message that I can just reply one to skip this month, and I stay subscribed because of that.
Yeah, and that's ideal, right? Because what you want, back to this earlier point, is you want to have a promise that you're going to solve their problem or help them achieve their goal. If they notice, if they're selling, if they have a subscription to toothpaste or clothing, and they notice that maybe you're not coming to the website or you're not engaging in some way, that you might be dealing with subscription overwhelm. And so they give you a way to slow it down so that you continue to get value. And it makes it a lot easier for you to rev it back up when you're ready, rather than completely leaving and never coming back.
Yep. Lily, I know this is something you think a lot about too, and like, any thoughts on subscription fatigue and how brands can avoid it?
Well, so one of the things I think is really interesting, I mean, it's all about this kind of acquisition to retention mindset where, I think we are not helping ourselves and each other by being so acquisition focused in the subscription world, where, our offerings, how many, we do these, we're tired of unsubscribing too, right? We're tired of forgetting and seeing the charge to our credit card, and therefore remembering to, it's a whole thing. And so I think that this idea of, like, really thinking about this, the value for price kind of trade-off, and how in a subscription, you're actually, there's no such thing as a kind of, somebody I was talking to said that, there's customers, there's no such thing as a lemon law, right? They vote with their feet. The customer renews because they've actually looked past along the course of that relationship with you and saw value, rather than sort of signing on for this promised future kind of state, right? And so I think that there's real value in thinking about, again, still moving to this retention mindset where the product experience, the engagement, the relationship over the course of the subscription becomes tantamount to acquisition strategy, right? Word of mouth is always the most powerful marketing. If you have, this is all the product-led growth stuff that we've been talking about. I think that is kind of interesting. And there's also this idea of sort of, there's voluntary churn and there's involuntary churn. From a voluntary churn perspective, one thing that we saw in our data that was interesting too was that there was a little bit of a difference for why consumers unsubscribed by age group. So let's say older than 35 consumers, it was much more about price sensitivity. Fees increased, or the fees were too high, or I couldn't justify the value, which to me also is that value price trade-off. The under 35 consumers were much more likely to say, oh, I just have too many subscriptions, or I'm paying for products I don't really need. And so there was much more of a kind of fatigue-esque sort of flavor to the younger unsubscribers, as it were. So that's really interesting too. Like it'll vary based on, just like there are myriad reasons why somebody might subscribe, the reasons that people are unsubscribing run the gamut. And so that's how many times we could make a little tea drinking game on this, like customer insights, right? Like how do you need to know your members, you need to know your customers in order to optimize this over time to avoid, your name coming up in their idea of, well, I don't need this anymore, I can unsubscribe.
Yeah, and I think that just ties into this subscription versus membership, and I think this is just something that brands need to get right. And we could talk for hours. We're running up on our time here, so I want to go through some of these a little bit quickly to make sure we get through them. But subscription versus membership, we kind of touched on this earlier, right? I think Robbie, you mentioned this, like a subscription as a function of it's a billing decision, but a subscription gives customer access to a product or service for a period of time. A membership means being a member of a store, an organization, a group, it's belonging. And then said differently, subscription is the notion of belonging. It's a relational concept. Sorry, membership. Subscription is a revenue agreement. It's a financial concept. It says nothing of the benefits, but it's rare that a person would pay for a subscription without the benefits of a membership. So I feel like we've touched on this in a number of the questions, but to kind of tie this all together, are there any thoughts on what does a great Robbie? I think this is like you wrote the book on it here, the membership economy. It's not called the subscription economy. It's called the membership economy. Like what does it mean to really offer a great membership versus a subscription?
Yeah, so I called the book The Membership Economy rather than Subscription Economy because I wanted to really emphasize the importance of organizations treating their customers like members. Whether, regardless of what the offering is and whether or not they use subscription pricing, that for me is the key to optimizing customer lifetime value. And subscription is just a pricing tactic. So you can have, like, for many years, Apple didn't have subscription pricing, right? They sold hardware, but people would come in and say, hey, I'm an Apple person. Tell me what products I should buy, because their forever promise that everything was just going to work beautifully together was so compelling, that it all worked and it all worked together, to the point where people would come in and say, Apple, tell me what printer to buy. And they'd say, we don't sell printers. And the person would say, well, then tell me where to go and what printer I should buy from someone else, because I'm an Apple person. And that's membership. And that gives you permission to charge as a subscription. But you want to start with the member mindset and then move to the subscription, rather than starting with this, contract without having the relationship to support it.
Yeah. And then this comes up quite a bit, moving from a membership into becoming a membership org. And so from the inside out, and I want to put up, I think I have it up here. Yeah, I put this quote up here just today, just this morning. Lily, I know Forrester recently put out a report, predictions 2022, and there was a bunch of them, which are all great. This I pulled out. I'm just going to read it really quick. Brands will invest in the commerce building blocks of their experience architectures. Order management, payments, and inventory control will make every touch point a shoppable moment. Investments in immersive experiences will turn browsing into virtual inhabiting, and this is the key, subscription billing will make loyalty a business model pivot. I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean by this?
It's exactly what we've been talking about. I think it's exactly aligned to this idea of, the product experience. The retention of a customer becomes more important than the acquisition of a new one. And that becomes a virtuous cycle where the loyalty, hopefully monetized in some way, right? Whether subscription or otherwise, is the focus. And so billing, we actually, we talk about the future of business and the future of buying as this like, there's VC money being thrown around, like digital kind of changes the way that we might launch products and onboard customers to products at lower cost. There's more experimentation happening. And so there's just this environment of kind of rapid reinvention that is underpinning kind of a business's survival plan today. And that requirement means that if you're reinventing, the likelihood is that you're changing your commercials, you're changing your monetization strategy, you're changing who your customers are, the channels in which you're selling, all of these things. And your billing, we might call subscription management subscription billing, of this technology that underpins it has to be able to support it. And so all of the operations, as we just talked about, kind of becoming a membership company, it means you also have to have technology that recognizes customer retention as the key, as the North Star, or it is not designed for a one-off transaction and set it and forget it mindset. It's really, we're seeing the evolution of the technology stack in addition to this more kind of membership, subscription, and loyalty mindset.
Yeah. Are you two okay to stay on for about 2 or 3 minutes after? Because there's 2 more questions I want to get through.
Yes.
Perfect. Robbie, I know you might have some thoughts on the membership org. Do you want to throw anything in there before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important things for organizations to think of is, one, the culture and the metrics that they use. So everybody is thinking about the shared metrics over time. And I think the other thing is that there are some different skills that are required if you're moving to subscription that even the largest and most successful operators don't have, just because they've never needed them. So starting to think about growth and thinking about engagement, thinking about expansion of relationship, different kinds of data analytics are needed. So if you're moving to subscription, be prepared to either upskill existing team members or bring in outside talent. And if you're bringing in outside talent, they don't necessarily have to come from your exact space. So, I was talking last night with someone from the CMO of Gannett, the newspaper company that has many newspapers, including USA Today. And he was saying that his growth team includes people from Spotify, from Freshly, from Netflix, from all kinds of companies beyond the world of news, because they bring the right skills and they bring a slightly different perspective.
Interesting. I love that. The 2 questions I want to get to are the future predictions or trends, and then last bit of advice for people. So we talked a little bit about what's happening right now. How do you see this playing out in the next 2 to 5 years? What trends are you really paying attention to, and what do you think subscription brands will look like in 5 years, let's say? Robbie or Lily, whoever wants to start, go ahead on this one. Lily, I'll throw it to you first, and then Robbie.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm going to take this from a bit of a technology point of view, if you don't mind, because this is what I'm thinking about now. Because if, in a world where privacy reigns supreme, where all of our marketing tactics, like cookies and third-party data and all of this really comes under fire, you start thinking about the importance of your zero or first-party data in powering how you go to market, how you acquire customers, how you kind of evolve. And so then the billing data, right? The subscription data of what got paid for, what fees were charged, what was bought, when it was bought, how that changed over time, what, should be like, billed for or entitled or provisioned. All of that lives in the billing system. And, Forrester has put this prediction out there that ultimately, like retailers and brands are going to know fewer than 20% of their customers in the future, right? So,
wow.
So when you have, my prediction is that billing technology becomes a really interesting, it emerges as kind of the center of gravity for a company's revenue strategy. It becomes more of a critical source of the zero or first party data that companies can use to drive revenue retention, drive revenue growth, right? So I kind of see this evolution shifting in the technology strategy.
Robbie, any trends you're paying attention to that you think will be interesting in the next few years?
Yeah, so two things. One of them, among any industry, any space that is using subscription, there's a sophistication that is developing where it's not enough to just say we have the subscription. It's like saying we have email. It's what is the role that subscription plays in our overall strategy. So I see more and more organizations using it as one color on their painting palette to create a stronger relationship with their customers, as opposed to just saying, let's check the box and say we have a subscription, therefore we should get a higher valuation. That's what I'm seeing with the companies that are really understanding subscription. And then the other thing that I pay attention to is these waves of industries that are being impacted. So, we're seeing a fast maturation among consumer products, retail, manufacturing is starting to get into things subscription related, farming, heavy equipment. We're seeing it move into some of the slower moving, higher capex kinds of businesses, which for me is fascinating and creates all kinds of new opportunities.
So how about final words of advice then? If you had to, for everyone listening, give them some advice to kind of make that transition into the next 3 to 5 years and be successful, what would you give them as advice? Lily, I'll start with you, and then Robbie.
Okay, I could give so many. Also, the one that's coming to mind, I think, is, and it may come as no surprise given what I've talked about for the last hour or so. I would say prepare for, let's say, success by building a kind of secure profile strategy. So, when you think about personalizing the subscription, right, and optimizing this over time, it means more data. More data is great, but it's also more risk. So, think about how you can manage and let customers manage, or subscribers or members manage their data, and manage the use of this data in accordance with sort of the privacy best practices, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's kind of a twofer. I think that, what's under this is that customer insights and data and personalization are really important. And that being said, it also means that sort of data privacy and data security come hand in hand with this. And so building customer profile strategy that is also very secure is one, I think, big piece of advice that are my sort of parting words.
How about you, Robbie?
I would say that if you're building a subscription right now or working on a subscription team, building out a subscription, you want to balance acquisition and engagement expansion. And so look at your business and figure out where the opportunity is to optimize. Most organizations over-index on kind of one metric. So figure out, is it about, acquisition, awareness, like they don't even know we exist? Is it acquisition? They know we exist, but they don't want what we have, or they don't think they want it. Is it about onboarding? Like we're bringing them in, but we're losing them really quickly. Or is it about we're bringing them in, they're staying for a while, and then we're running out of benefits? Like we're not, as Lily said, continuing to layer in more value over time. Focus in on that and then tie it back to that forever promise that you make. So say, what is it that we're doing on an ongoing basis for our customers? And are we still doing that in the best way possible? Yeah. Are we still delivering on our promise in the best way possible? And to keep going back to that as your touchstone, as a way of protecting the integrity of your relationship with your subscribers.
That's so good. Well, like every good webinar, we went slightly over time. There's been a bunch of questions that have come in, but we ran out of time. I even skipped a few questions, but this was great. I'm going to make sure that we try to address a lot of these questions that came in just by email. But I mentioned at the very beginning at Bold, subscriptions are a huge part. We're just going to throw this up quickly as if If anyone's interested in, if they have questions about subscriptions, even if they just want to chat about it, or of course, if you're interested in getting started in it, we'd of course love to help you. Just go ahead and click on the poll and someone will reach out. And I did have a question. I did have a slide for questions at the end, but by no means do you need to, sorry, we don't have time to address them, but I'm going to follow up by email on a lot of them. And once this slide, we'll leave it up here for a second. Actually, while people are throwing their answers in there really quick, I'll give my last piece of advice. Something I've noticed a lot of successful subscription brands doing lately is making referred by friend a key metric. And referred by friend is generally one of the main ways that customers start a subscription because a friend told them about it. And you're more likely to refer someone to something you subscribe to than to something you just bought once. I've noticed that myself, and I've noticed that with my friends, and it's just a true fact that people who are subscribed are more likely to refer. Yet most subscription brands don't track that as a key metric. They wouldn't even know it. If I asked them like what percentage of your orders come referred by friend, they have no clue. So I would encourage everyone listening to track it. You can survey it. You can, when people subscribe, you can have a field that says, how did you hear about us? Find out what that number is, and then implement strategies to grow it every month. One of the best ways you can do that is by giving a really, really compelling offer that they can give a friend, not just a link that they can share and give anyone 10%, but give them like 3 completely free months they can give someone. It was kind of the same way that a Clubhouse grew so fast. Like you only were allowed to share 5 referrals, even though Clubhouse had a lot of success, and maybe now they aren't as much, but nonetheless they grew super fast, but they shared a limited number of referrals. So anyways, that's my tip. Here's where you can follow our guests, and thank you everyone for watching. For those that weren't able to stay to the end because we went a little bit over, we'll for sure send out the recording. Lily and Robbie, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.